Hi, welcome to You Didn't Get the Memo. I'm your host, Gloria Bailey Ray, and as always, we have a fantastic show for you today. Y'all, I cannot wait for us to talk with Miss Livacious Lu. But I just want to remind all of you, You Didn't Get the Memo is about providing you, the viewer, with relevant, factual, mainstream information to help you be informed and to make informed decisions. The other beauty of this show is that if you have questions for my guests or comments, you can place them in the comments section and we'll do our very best to get to those questions or, the comments. So I also love it when you guys put in where you are, tuned in from. So if you want to just give a shout out, definitely please do so. I also want to personally thank each and every one of you for your love and your support, both physically, financially, and I tell you from the bottom of my heart, it really and truly means so much. You heard me say that my guest today is Miss Lucretia Clark, also known as Livacious Lu, and that's who we're going to be dealing with. But let me just share this with you. This is a thought. Being a woman in corporate America, it comes with its fair share of challenges, often facing gender discrimination, bias in the workplace. But let me just say this, if you're a Black woman or a woman of color, these gender-based challenges are often compounded by obstacles of racism, making it even harder for you to navigate your way to the top. Now, regardless of your desire to advance, there are always these seemingly barriers that's ahead of you that kind of keeps you from moving forward. And that's why I'm excited to be able to talk to Livacious Lu. And the word that I want you guys to hold on to is microaggression. Because you know what? When you think about microaggression in already a marginalized group of people, we're going to kind of talk about that. But let me tell you about our guest, Miss Lucretia Coleman, aka Livacious Lu. She's a certified integrative wellness coach. She's a vibrant visual artist, dynamic speaker, no question about it. She's the founder of Jamari Enterprises, LLC, which is a corporation that's committed to guiding women through life's colorful experiences while assisting in their personal growth, enhancement, and integrative elevation. Y'all, I want to welcome to the show Miss Livacious Lu. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am so excited to have you here.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm so glad that we're going to do this. How are
Yes.
you doing?
Oh man, if it got any better, all I can say is I couldn't stand it. And you are the highlight of my day. So thank you so very much for
You're
joining
quite
me.
welcome.
I really appreciate it. So for me, I always believe in jumping right in. So
Okay.
let's just start with, tell us a little bit about Miss Livacious Lu's backstory. A couple of minutes, but let us ease into it. But tell us a little bit about who Livacious Lu is.
Okay. Well, who I am now is not the person that I was. I'm this little chocolate girl who was born, raised, and educated in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I attended the schools there. I was a single mom, became a single mom while I was in high school. Graduated from high school on a Friday. I started working on that Monday, which happened to be my 17th birthday. And I worked from that day for another 37 and a half years, primarily in corporate America. And I then also went on to obtain my Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration from Gwinnett Mercy College. And that was, I was so proud of that because I did that while working full time in a Fortune 100 company. And I graduated magna cum laude with a discipline in organization management. I then went on to be certified as a integrative wellness coach through the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. I did that online, and I did that over a course of 3 years. And coupled with my life experiences, here I am today.
And that is one of the reasons why we have you on the show, because we want to show women that, you know what, that old saying, it used to be, you can't have it all or you can't do it all. And you did so much, and still, you're still continuing to do a whole lot. So thank you for sharing that. But listen, you stepped out of corporate America and started doing your own thing. Tell us why you did that.
Yes. Well, I before stepping out and doing my own thing, I was doing it as a side hustle. So I realized that I wasn't being challenged enough. I came up against quite a few challenges and opposition and things that I wanted to do. And I felt as if I wasn't really being 100. I was being, I had challenges that caused me to not come correct in everything I did. I felt a little paralyzed because of the beliefs and the behaviors that not
Mm-hmm.
only did I have in my head, but
Mm-hmm.
also what I experienced while being in corporate America.
Right, right. And I can relate to that, having
Mhm.
spent over 30 years in corporate America before I stepped out and started to do my own thing. And
Mhm.
there is just something to be said. Now, I will say this. I was able to cut my teeth on corporate America, and I took those things that I learned that I felt would really benefit me. But at the same time, it was just something about being in control of my own life, of what was my story. That was something that was really, really important. And I just think that it's vitally important that people who are watching the show today, or who are kind of teetering on what should I do, how should I do, and of course we know the pandemic has caused a lot of people to rethink the things that they have
Mhm.
been doing, or were doing, and really kind of come full circle and say, okay, I got to sit with myself and figure out what I want to do. And I think that that's the beauty of it. But here's a question for you, Miss Lu. What are some of the things that you still see happening today that were happening when you were in corporate America? Because as much as things have changed, let's just say that there's still some things that are still the same. Would you say?
Yes, correct. Yeah, there are definitely things that are still the same. They may be presented to us a little differently, but the foundation and fundamentals of it, it's still there. So, in corporate America, what I found, and I am finding still when I speak to women that are still in corporate America, that the policies and processes that the corporations have in place, they have an underlying thread of being a disadvantage to Black women and women of color, primarily because the individuals that are making the decisions as to whether or not you will climb that ladder, or the ones at the table that are speaking on anyone's behalf as an advocate, don't look like us and don't have our best interest at heart.
Yes, yes, yes. Come on
Right.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they always say, well, at the board table, pull up a chair. I'm like, you know what? I'm not pulling up a chair, because I did that. When I
Hmm.
pulled up
Hmm.
a chair, I felt the pushback where they didn't really want to hear my voice, because
Right.
my voice was not the same as theirs. I said, well,
Yes.
that's not what you
Yes.
call diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Hmm.
It's more like unequity, inequity, and not being not being included.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
And even at the point of when you're in corporate America and you bring your own chair to the table, if you don't have that mentor, that supporter, that advocate for you, it
yeah,
absolutely means nothing. And that's one of the things that people, and I find women and women of color, in corporate America, if you don't advocate for yourself and know what to ask for, then guess what? You really and truly are left out. Because what I found was that a lot of my colleagues who were white, they would come in and they had mentors. They knew what the game plan was.
Right.
And you're thinking that going out and working 60 hours a week or 70 hours and working on weekends, and it was absolutely crazy. And when I finally found myself and just said, no more, I'm tired. But one of the things is, while you're on your Miss Lu, Livacious Lu, is to talk about the strategies to help people in terms of that wellness piece, that wholeness piece, and understanding the need to be. I mean, if you aren't well, and I'm talking about not just physically, but mentally too.
Right.
If you don't have that together, it just all kind of falls apart. So I'm excited to hear you say that. But yeah, I just realized I had to bring my own seat to the table. And sometimes I feel like I need to bring the whole darn table. So
and there was the point where I decided, I was thinking about it before I made the decision.
Mhm.
I said, I got to create my own table, because it was so stressful. And let me just say that my overall experience working in corporate America, and for the majority of that time I worked for one fabulous corporation, it was very positive for me. And I learned early as an administrative assistant, because administrative assistants, you get to see all, you get to control the manager's calendar. You are privy to a lot of information and processes that other individuals may be siloed.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate to learn from mentors and advocates, some that worked inside the organization, some that worked
Mhm.
out, and some
Yes.
that did not look like me. And I
Yes.
had those advocates speaking on my behalf when it did count.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I also, I walked the talk. It's like, what? My performance preceded me. So it didn't matter what I was wearing or my specific physical look.
Right. Right. And I came along in corporate America where it did matter. All the way down to the length of your suit skirt. Because I came along in corporate America where we weren't even wearing slacks. Okay, you didn't wear slacks, no
All
pants,
right.
none of that, and it was booted and suited, and those 5 and 6 inch heels, all of those things, and you just find yourself. I always say, when I take a step back and look back over my life, how far I have come, that it's just the things that you didn't know. And, a lot of that, of course, had a lot to do with my upbringing. And I will
Mhm.
say some of it now in this day and time, we probably need to bring back a little more style than what we're
Yeah.
seeing,
Yeah.
but very, very different, 30, 35 years ago in corporate America.
Yeah, and I did see that. It was very evident when I worked in that corporate environment. But I've always been a trailblazer,
Hmm.
and I've never been one that was comfortable with going along with mainstream. I said, if you wanted to go, if everybody was going right, I'm like, why don't we go left? What's wrong with that? And it wasn't until I was in a toxic relationship personally
Hmm.
where I realized I have a voice that's worth hearing. I have worth to me, because my daddy and mommy did not, raise me to be subjected to toxicity
Yes,
and to
yes.
other people's abusive
Hmm.
behavior.
Hmm.
So at that point, I came out my shell, because I used to be a very quiet person,
Get out.
very quiet. I would be walking behind everybody else. I didn't want to raise my hand. I remember when I was in first grade, and this is really telling on me right now. I remember in first grade where it was the Sonny Liston and the Cassius Clay was his name at the time. It was their boxing match. And the teacher wanted to know, well, who all is rooting for Sonny Liston? Well, everybody was going to root for Sonny Liston. I didn't know why, but I chose the individual Cassius Clay, who respectively, has transitioned and, when at that time known as Muhammad Ali. I was too afraid to raise my hand because I didn't want to be singled out.
Mm-hmm.
I learned my lesson later in life. I'm like, you know what? I have to go against the grain and speak up for myself and what I believe in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Miss Livacious Lu, listen, we are going to just take a quick break. You guys, thank you guys for hanging in here. We got Texas in the house. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're just going to take a really quick break. We will be right back. So guys, don't you go anywhere. And when we come back, we're going to have Miss Livacious Lu talk to us about becoming an artist. And I'm going to wrap it all up in a nice little ball for you. But don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Testing. Why did the girl ask the mushroom to dance? Because he was a fun guy.
Over. When you adopt a shelter pet, you discover all the things that make them unique. And your mother. They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love.
All right. If you guys are just tuning in, we've got the Livacious Lu on with us today, who is a creative strategist. She's a speaker. She's an author. She's an artist. And she's just dope all the way around. That's the way to put it. That's what I'm going to say. And before we went to break, I had actually asked Miss Lu if she would talk about becoming an artist. Now, hopefully you guys, and I want to remind you guys, you can go back and watch the show. I leave it up on Facebook and YouTube just for those of you who may be on the East Coast or better yet on the West Coast and not catching it at 5, but you can go back and watch the show. But Miss Lu, before we went to break, I asked you to talk about becoming an artist. And an artist, you started painting with watercolors. Tell us a little bit about that, because it's going to tie into, your book, A Vibrant Mess.
Yes. Well, starting as an artist, I actually started painting when I was in high school, but I attended a college prep high school. So I was really threatened and afraid of pursuing the art because I needed time to, focus on the majors, the major topics. So I dropped the art, and it wasn't until about, decades later when I picked up a paintbrush. And I started painting with watercolors in a class as an elective to complete my business degree. And I was experimenting with the art colors, the primary colors, the red, yellow, and blue. And I was fascinated by how, depending on the amount of water, the colors and the hues would just mingle together, and some would be more vibrant than others. And I noticed the more water I added, the more diluted the colors were. And it was an aha moment for me, because I said, that's kind of reflective of my life right now. I felt diluted, and I didn't feel as if the hues of me, my God-given masterpiece, was actually as vibrant as what it should be.
Wow. The way you put that, the hues, they weren't as vibrant. They weren't reflective of who you are. And I think that there are a lot of people watching the show can relate to that. And that's why I love color. I love bright colors. I want to be happy. And it's just something about those colors that make such a difference, which I ask you about that because you wrote a book called A Vibrant Mess.
Yes.
And I want you to tell us about this book, because you guys, let me just say this. Miss Livacious Lu, inside of her book, guys, the colors are vibrant. They draw you in. It is just a phenomenal book. And I actually sat down and read through all of this. So
Oh,
tell us
thank
about
you.
A Vibrant Mess, how it came to be, what motivated you to write it. And, just kind of, we're going to kind of set the stage for our viewers.
Mm-hmm. So as I was explaining, when I was painting again, I was painting with watercolors and noticing how the colors would mingle with each other and how there were various levels of vibrancy. So equating that to my life and working in corporate America, I realized this is exactly what's happening to many of the women, specifically women of color in corporate America, representing their life. Busy life, they have responsibilities at the 9 to 5, and let's face it, if you're an executive and working in corporate, it's probably 60 hours, so you're working 9 to 9 every day and on the weekends, and your palette becomes diluted. Now, when I speak of palette, I equate everyone's life as a palette. And I needed to express all of that to the women, those women in corporate who were experiencing the things that I was experiencing. And I wanted to provide them with a very a helpful guidebook, if you will, that they can easily reference and to help them to navigate the waters of corporate and understand what, why, and how their palette was no longer as vibrant as what it should be.
Mm. Oh, yes, absolutely. And a lot of times people don't even realize that they've lost their shine,
Right,
right?
exactly.
And you're trying to figure out where it's at, but you should always have control of your shine. You should always make sure that no matter what, and you and I kind of chatted just a little bit before we went live, is that no matter what's going on, you know what? I'm not going to let you steal my shine. I'm not going to let you steal my thunder. And
That's
and
right.
and if we start to think in that way, in that manner, everything is just only temporary. No matter how you look at it, it's still this temporary. So to hear you say that, I love the way that you talked about that. So, Miss Livacious Lu, setting the stage for the viewers, let's talk about what your role as a creative strategist is. In your opinion, what makes a good strategist? Because I look, I have my own ideas. But let's talk about what that role is so people will know and be able to reach out to you.
Okay, great. So as a creative strategist, first, understanding what a strategist role is. And that's my responsibility with the clients that I work with is to help them to develop a vision statement for themselves that is SMART. And all of us that work in corporate know what that SMART acronym is all about. And for those of you who may not be familiar, they are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-based objectives and goals. So I help individuals achieve that through an in-depth discussion that I have with them based on data and information that they've provided after taking an online quiz. And that quiz is, what's your vibrancy profile? And through a 5-minute assessment, we're able to identify for the individual which areas of her life are less vibrant than what they should be, and which areas we need to focus on so that when she develops the strategic vision for her life, it's more realistic and attainable. It's SMART.
Yeah,
And we
absolutely.
do it in creative ways, like with a vibrant life palette workshop, which some people refer to as a vision board workshop. But I don't do traditional. I don't do just a typical vision board workshop, because what's the use of going through a magazine cutting out pretty pictures that may not be aligned with your authenticity. So that's why I incorporated the assessment part of it. And then we have an in-depth analysis and discussion one-on-one. And that individual is able to identify, along with my guidance, which areas are most important for you to enhance so that you can have an integrative, bold, and empowered, vibrant life palette so that you can walk in your authenticity and live your best life. Because honestly, most of us are not.
Yeah, I would 150% agree with you. And I'm laughing, not at you, with you, because that was one of the things when you and I first talked, like you said, people going through magazines and they're cutting out and they're doing these, but it's how do you live and how do you really show up as in your best life, and that's why for me being authentic is just really, really so key. So thank you for talking about that. But look, let's talk about how women of color have been marginalized due to unequal power distributions in areas of education. We talk about society, politically, economically, and even we talk about culturally.
Yeah.
But that's notwithstanding, you're already dealing with racism, sexism, and a lack of mentorship, leadership. And I know I said a lot in there, but let's just start with, how women of color have just been marginalized just across the board.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate and it's disheartening. Particularly when you start with what we receive as pay, compensation for the work that we do. When you talk about the pay gap, primarily there are about 80% of people. It's 63 cents out of a dollar, 63 cents out of every dollar is what women make compared to the white non-Hispanic male.
Right.
And then when it comes to women of color, that amount is even lessened due to other factors that come in when you talk about inequities of processes, or such as like recruitment or advancement, in the workplace. And we're often seen when we are very outspoken and we are assertive, we get the label of being an angry Black woman. There's also another word, but I'm not going to use that. Right. Whereas other individuals in the workforce are seen as strong. And, they're good leaders.
And they're a team player.
Oh, yes. It's like, oh, well, Lucretia didn't, she wasn't very forthcoming. And she didn't say thank you to all of the work that we did while she was away. And I'm like, I was doing your job in the first place. So why do I need to thank you for doing something that you're getting paid to do?
Yes. Amen.
Yeah.
And that's real. I mean, it really and truly is real. And one of the things that I found myself working on when I first started, I need to see a therapist, right? Mm-hmm. I need to learn how not to be labeled as the angry Black woman, only because I spoke up. I was direct. I didn't mince my words. I tell you exactly what I thought. And I believe that if people ask you for your opinion, I'm not going to sugarcoat. I'm going to give you my opinion. But there's a whole nother level when you're in corporate America you really and truly that you can't do that. And it took me a long time to get to that point where I was able to just speak my truth, stand in it, and be okay with it, because that was their problem, not mine. Right. So you talk about the pay gap. We're already off on unequal footing. But then let's just talk about just in terms of the education piece. How difficult is that? And the pandemic itself has really shown for even our children of color not having the tools and things that they needed, everything from internet to,
Right.
computers, laptops, those kinds of things. So let's talk a little bit about, that unequal distribution as it relates to education also.
Yeah. When it comes to education, we we have mostly the shorter end of the stick. It's more challenging for us to gain the education, whether we're doing it online or if we're going into a classroom. I know we haven't been doing that in the previous year because of the pandemic, but the woman in a household, whether she is single or if she has a partner, a spouse in the house, if you're raising any children that are still living in the household, she is the primary caretaker or responsible for making sure that everything is done in the household. Now, not everybody does that, because some women are really focused on themselves, their career, and they're not really open to wearing the multiple roles. And when they do, they may exhibit one role more passionately than the other. But it's you have to find the babysitter. Okay, you're expected to fix the meal.
Mm-hmm.
You're expected to clean the house. When do you have time for yourself to
Mm-hmm.
educate yourself, for
Right.
self-care? When do you have time for self-love,
Mm-hmm.
self-growth, and self-expression? So
Yes.
it's marginalized for us, and we have to support each other so that each of us can obtain that.
Yes, yes, yes. So true. So very, very true. And
Yeah.
those roles, and let me just say this for the women who are watching. Hey guys, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We got people saying yes, hashtag fact. But let me
Thank
just
you.
say, yes,
I hear
for
you.
yes, for those women who have been labeled being selfish because they have said education is really important to me. And so, guess what? If you can't, I just love this. On one of the news stations I was watching, where this woman, her husband, even though he went to work and she worked too, and she did
Mhm.
everything with the kids. And she comes home and there are dirty dishes all in the sink, dirty clothes. And so she went on strike. 5 days, she didn't do anything but just focused on self. Let me just tell you, he got that memo. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
And
He got that.
sometimes you have to go to those extremes. But for those women who say, this is what I need to do, it's not about you feeling guilty about it. That's a choice.
Right.
And sometimes we take on more than we probably should. And when you've got a partner or mate or whatever, to me, it's 50-50. I know it's always going to be 60-40, 70-30. But if you're always coming up on the short end, it's something to think about and to look at. And so that's one of the things. So thank you so much for just really talking about dealing with that. So I want to talk about microaggressions
Oh boy.
and how they affect women of color,
Woo.
because I just think back over my lifetime, some of the stuff that people have said to me, and I'm sitting there thinking, in my mind, I was really cursing them out, right? But you didn't allow yourself to say that. But let's talk about the microaggressions and how they affect and show up with women of color. Talk a little bit about that.
Woo.
I know.
We gonna need another time slot to really get it all in. But no, let's just hit the top level.
All right, go for
Um, it happens a lot. It's People say it's unintentional. I tend to disagree. Um, on many levels, it can be unintentional, but I think a lot of individuals who don't walk in my shoes are now just becoming aware of their privilege, particularly like by white women, their privilege that they're not privy that they have. But there are indirect and subtle things that are said or done. For instance, oh, you speak so well. I was like, what does that mean? I'm an educated woman. I mean, my daughter received that when she was in elementary school.
Yes, yes, yes.
And then on top of it, it wasn't unintentional or a subtle remark.
Mm-hmm.
That was what was said over the phone when people did not meet me face to face. When they did,
oh yeah,
I didn't know you were Black. I said, well, you never asked, and I never shared my my ethnicity, so why would you know?
And I did think that would be a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It shouldn't have come up.
Mm-hmm. And those little acts, those unintentional acts of discrimination that are weaved into processes and policies. When we were just talking about education, okay, when our Black and brown children don't have the resources that other children have to continue their education and to receive quality learning, that is a microaggression, because the system is set up so that the schools that they attend don't receive the proper funding. They don't receive the funding, and they don't receive the resources that are needed so that that child can have a level field of obtaining the same level of education as the next child.
Right, absolutely. And something as simple as, I know some of the younger generations, they hear things and they may not see it, but I just say, you know what, there's something to be said about having some maturity. Okay.
Yeah.
And one of the things that comes to mind is the comment about wearing bright nail polish.
Mm-hmm.
You people love to wear bright colors.
You people. Yes.
You people. Or can I touch your hair? You guys seem to do so much with your hair. And it's those subtleties, those things, you know, that, and you're sitting there saying, oh, okay. I can remember, true story. I was in pharma and I actually had a pair. And in this particular case, it was actually CZ, it was cubic zirconium. And the guy that was my manager says to me, wow, you must spend all your paycheck on jewelry. Those earrings must have cost a lot. Now, what did that tell me? First of all, he was ignorant. Second of all, if he really knew anything about jewelry, you know, I just happen to have some good cubic zirconium. But what difference did it make? But to make that comment and how they think and see, or it's always, you always seem to be dressed so nice. Well, how else am I supposed to dress if I'm following the dress code, you know, within the company? So it's all of those things. And I just want people watching the show to understand, look, make no mistake about it. There are all these undertones. When we talk about microaggression, it's the undertones and the things that are said that you really have to turn up your bell tone hearing aid and really, really listen to and listen for. So thank you, you know, Miss Livacious Lu, for talking about that.
And if I could just, you know, add to that, when we experience those microaggressions, when we hear them, when we see them, they foster those paralyzing behaviors and beliefs that we carry into adulthood, because it does start at a very young age.
Yes, yes, it does.
And until we're able to really be willing to rediscover who we are authentically, and we get sick and tired of being sick and tired, that's when we're able to take that first step and then ultimately live your best life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you so much for, for bringing and pulling that out. Listen, we're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, one of the things that I want to hear you talk about, because, we're going to get into this book, A Vibrant Mess, but talk about, what do you mean by coming to terms with yourself? What do you mean, and how can a person successfully do this? So you guys don't go anywhere. Thank you for hanging in there with us. You are tuned in to You Didn't Get the Memo with my awesome guest, the Livacious Lu. We'll be right back.
Before we celebrate the freedom most Americans have, we must fight for the freedom all Americans deserve. Because all lives can't matter until Black lives matter.
All right, guys, you are tuned in to You Didn't Get the Memo with my fabulous guest, the Livacious Lu Clark, who is just, we're just like on a roll today. So look, I always say, if you don't take anything away from today's show, then it's you who didn't get the memo, because Livacious Lu is bringing it. Before we went to break, one of the questions that I asked her was, what does she mean by coming to terms with yourself? How can a person successfully do that? Talk about that, please.
Being receptive to hearing the good, but more so the bad about you. You have to really realize, and this is something that I did, coming to terms with saying to myself, Lu, you're all that, but you're not all that in a bag of chips. You are not 100. You are not perfect. And that, I really started to pay attention to the words that I was saying to myself and the comments that I was receiving from people who were around me. So I have this very small group of individuals. They're not even 5 of them. There are less than that. They're what I consider my kitchen table friends. When you get around the kitchen table and you're drinking your liquid grapes or whatever, and you're chit-chatting, you're not gossiping, but you're actually having a down-to-earth, real nitty-gritty conversation with your BFS, your ride or dies. And I ask those individuals, like, tell me not only what you admire about me, but tell me the stuff that I don't want to hear. Those are the individuals that I want in my corner. And once I got to that point, I said, okay, well, let me take an assessment of who I am and find out of the 10 areas. And those 10 areas that I've identified, I did it for myself. They are the 10 areas of the life palette: your spirituality, your mind, your body, your career, finances, self-identity. Then it goes on to your relationships, your physical activity, cultural awareness, and home environment. So those are the 10 areas that I identified for each individual's life palette. And when you actually ask the hard questions and you receive the not so pretty answers, that's when you start to come to terms with yourself.
Yeah. And you know what? That's something that's really hard for so many people to do. Simply because a lot of times friendships, I say that so many of them are so superficial.
Yeah.
So I love the fact, like you said, I think I can count on one hand, 3 fingers, those people that I could really go to and say, look, I need you to be straight with me. tell me this, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the
Right.
in between. And most people really don't want to hear that. They really don't want to do the self work, because
Right.
that's really and truly when you dig in and you stop and start to really look at and evaluate from outside, and you start looking inwardly and say, I'm really not all of that, a bag of chips and some French onion dip, right?
Right. Exactly. That is
So
so true.
yeah, that it really is the reality. So hearing you say that and talking about that, which will lead us into my next question for you, is about a person getting unstuck when they're dealing with stuff. And a lot of the stuff that people are dealing with happens to be stuff that they have packed down and they've not ever dealt with. And as a result of that, you say, okay, here we go. So how does a person get unstuck if they're talking to a creative strategist, a wellness coach, who's going to say, look, let me just break it down for you?
Well, first, I'm a consultant, so I guide individuals. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. But what I do is provide individuals with the tools so that they can first assess their entire self, their whole self, based on those 10 areas. The What's Your Vibrancy Profile assessment tool. All of my individuals, all the clients that I work with, I always ask them to take that quiz first and be honest with it. And it can be very enlightening to them. And once an individual takes that test, it's like, oh, wow. It's like, based on that, I thought that was really a good area, an area where I was really comfortable and confident about, but then not. And then after that assessment, we take a really in-depth and we dive into those areas that come up less vibrant through the results of their What's Your Vibrancy Profile. But the fundamental of all of it and anything is your spirituality.
Yes.
It's your faith. It's the basis for creating your vibrant, your authentic, be beautiful life masterpiece. If you don't have that as your foundation, I don't care how much money you have. I don't care what type of career you have. I don't care if you have the best relationships. It ain't gonna mean a thing if you ain't got that thing.
Right.
And it's called spirituality.
Right.
You gotta have that as your foundation.
Oh my goodness, you're so spot on, which leads me into this part. I love this book. I mean, I have read through it a couple of times already. But in your book, A Vibrant Mess, one of the things that you talk about, you focus on 5 areas: spirit, mind, body, relationship, and careers. If I were to ask you, just give us a quick snippet around each of those areas, starting with spirit, because you've already kind of led into that. Talk about it.
Well, let me equate it to being an artist.
Okay.
Because I do incorporate my artistic skills into it.
Yes.
So your life palette has the 10 areas, and they all equate to 10 hues or colors. Yes, that's my artwork in there. Thank you. And if you remember in art class, you have 3 primary colors: red, yellow, and blue. And with the life palette, I've identified your 3 primary areas, which are your spirituality, your mind, and your body. Well, everybody says mind, body, and soul. I was like, you know what? Let's change it and always say spirituality first. Got to put it in the forefront.
Right.
So with spirituality, I spoke on that. But with your mind, it gets into what you're telling yourself.
Yes. Beautiful art.
We talk to ourselves all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, some
Mm-hmm.
of us we answer ourselves, but that's a characteristics of a very intelligent person and creative person.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that for me.
Yeah, yeah. But with your mind, you're self-taught. We're often saying things to ourselves mentally that after a while we start to believe it. And it creates those barriers, those limiting
Yes.
and paralyzing beliefs.
Mhm.
Your body is what you think
Yes.
of your body temple.
Yes.
Embrace it. I
Yes.
don't need to look like the images that I see in mainstream media. Even today, as much as we have gotten to the point where mainstream media does incorporate more women that look like me,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, there aren't enough. I
Yes.
didn't have them when I was growing up. So that is part of my psyche, my mindset,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
until I was to the point in life where I was able to change that.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to hear you say that. And I do want to say again to my viewers, you all listen, the fact that there is so much artwork in A Vibrant Mess. I just want to tell you guys, you've just got to get the book. It's a really easy read. And I can't say enough about A Vibrant Mess. We're going to take just a really, really, really quick break. And when we come back, Miss Lu, one of the things that I would like for you to share with our viewers who are watching the show, what is it that you want them to take away from today's show? And I ask that of every guest. So you guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Thank you for watching the You Didn't Get the Memo show with your inspirational host, Gloria Bailey Ray. It's your contributions that make this happen. To become a sponsor, send an email to youdidn'tgetthememo@gmail. That's the letter U, didn't get the memo. If you're not in a space to be a sponsor, but you like what you hear, we simply ask that you support what you like by making a contribution to the show. There are 3 ways to make an online donation. Visit paypal.me/Gloria Bailey Ray or Cash App or Venmo, Gloria Bailey Ray. Give what you can. Your support is appreciated.
All right. Thank you guys so much for hanging in here. I have had as my awesome guest, the Livacious Lu, and we have been talking. I think we've just covered a plethora of different topics. One of the things before we took a short break, I wanted to have my guest, Miss Livacious Lu, to share with people who are watching the show, what is it that you want them to take away from today's show?
Mm, that it's okay to not feel as if you are fully being yourself. Recognize it, but have the courage to take the steps so that you can become your full and vibrant, authentic self. It's going to take work, but it's well worth it, because if you do not, you are cheating yourself out of being the most authentic, kick-ass, vibrant individual who has something to contribute not only to your family, but your local community, your organization, your business, and the global community. We need you. We need you to be 100 and vibrant. Otherwise, we are cheating the world of everything that we so graciously have been given divinely. And it's just, to me, it's a disgrace if we do not show it and live it. We have to do that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And for those of you who are wanting to know how you can actually purchase A Vibrant Mess, you can go to Lu, that's capital Lu, at livaciouslu.com. Guys, I tell you, it is an awesome book, and it's just worth it with all of the beautiful hand painted pictures inside of this. I want to say to Miss Livacious Lu, thank you so much for being on the show. Whatever you do, Do not, go anywhere. We're going to, you hang in there with me. I just want to just remind our viewers of a couple of things. So don't go anywhere. Hey, I want to remind you guys that coming up, I want you to be sure and tune in next week when I'll be chatting with world-renowned artist, Miss Andrea Harvey. She's going to be discussing how she displays activism through art. And this sister is dope, dope, dope. Again, that's the only thing that I know, but she is awesome. Also, I want to say, Noobs, loosen up, you Kappas. I want you to know that the following week on May 25th, I'm going to be sitting down with Derek Butler, and we're going to be discussing, he has an app, and we're going to be talking about cosmetology meets technology. That's right, cosmetology meets technology. And I'm just going to say to you men and women, you don't want to miss the show, no matter what it is that you do. And I'm on every Tuesday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. on Eastern Time. And guys, always, 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 always bringing you something that's informational, educational, and inspirational. I want to again thank my guest, Miss Lucretia Coleman-Clark, for being on the show today. I want you to remember to support our efforts. None of this just happens by chance, but by your efforts, by supporting us. Inquire about our sponsorship opportunities and the packages that are available to you, but also you can make a donation. Hey, be sure to follow me on all social media. You can find me pretty much everywhere on social media platforms. And be sure to mark your calendar for every Tuesday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to join me with my dynamic guests. Listen, here's what I want you to know. As I always say, if you didn't take anything away from today's show, then it's you who did not get the memo. Until then, you guys, this time next week, I'm going to ask you to stay safe. Practice emotional intelligence. Be kind and pay it forward. Remember this, that the quality of your life is determined by the decisions that you make. I'm your host, Gloria Bailey Ray. Peace out.